guys? Welcome back to another quick video here on the Fantasy Fellow Show channel. My name is Kyle. Alvin Kamara, he pleads no contest to a lesser misdemeanor charge that happened back in February of 2022. This video, I basically just want to talk about Alvin Kamara's 2023 fantasy outlook. Here is the official article here. Again, it's saying he pleaded no contest to a lesser misdemeanor charge of breach of peace for an incident that took place in Las Vegas. So no felony charge, which is pretty good for Alvin Kamara. He's probably going to get, I think most people are expecting a suspension in between 4 and 6 games. And I think that's probably leaning more towards the 4-game suspension for me. We have a lot of history of the NFL doing these suspensions, even when there's not a non-felony, or even if there's not a misdemeanor, there's still a suspension coming. So I think with Kamara, the biggest question is going to be, is it 4 games? Is it 6 games? Is it 8? We don't really know. I think my projections right now are leaning towards it being a 4-game suspension. Obviously, now that the NFL has seen all this information come out, there's going to be some kind of decision coming out on Kamara's suspension. I would think hopefully before training camp. Again, training camp, I believe rookies report for most camps next week, and then the veterans the following weekend around July 25th. So we should get some action on this really soon. But let's talk about his 2023 outlook. Now, the Saints, it seemed like they were bracing for something like this. They signed Jamal Williams to a 3-year deal, paid him a decent chunk of change. He also was one of the first players to sign in free agency this year. So the Saints wanted to lock him up, knowing that this was potentially coming. And then they also go out and draft Kendre Miller. So where do we draft Alvin Kamara? Is he going to be used as a running back too for fantasy football this year? If you look at what he did last year, he did okay last year, but it was actually his worst statistical season in fantasy points per game wise. He only averaged 14.6 PPR points per game. He had 897 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns, which is a career low. He also had 57 receptions, 490 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. He didn't play very great last year. He also, he had 223 carries, which was great. He got a lot of volume, but he did not see the 80 receptions that he saw the first 4 years of his career. He also didn't have a really good yards per carry. He just was not as efficient as he had been in the past. So it was a down year for him, only 4 touchdowns. Metrics were low in receiving and rushing as well. So what can we expect from him? I think coming into this, let me pull this one up here. I have all of his ADPs pulled up here for you guys. And basically in ESPN, he is being drafted right now as RB 22, 78th overall, which puts him, that's square in the middle of the 7th round, which I think is maybe a bit rich. RB 22, essentially, let's see. I think Kamara was RB. So here's my issues. He played 15. So keep in mind, he played 15 games last year, averaged 14.6. If we're expecting him to play maybe 13 games, let's see what he would end up being. Now, again, RB 16 last year. And again, it was a down year for him, but he did play 15 games. So I think at best, his ceiling is probably right about here. If he does ball out, he's going to be probably a mid to low end RB2. By the end of the season. And we know if he misses 4 or 6 games, he's not playing in those games, but when he does return, he might be playing, at a nice RB2 level like this here. Now let's go back to here. Yahoo, they have him at RB 31, 79th overall. Yahoo's half PPR, those get pushed up, running backs get pushed up a little bit more. So I think that's probably making more sense for me. And then Sleeper, they're the highest on him in terms of overall ranking. They have him at 69.2, RB 27. I think I'm more inclined to think that he's going to be between RB 27 and RB 31. That seems about right. But I do think his ADP here of 78 to 90th, that's probably a little bit too rich, especially in a full or in a half PPR side. I think he's got more value on full PPR. And then look at his best ball ADP. I think these are where sharper drafters are drafting right now. And they're all well below ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper. On Drafters, which is a full PPR site, he's RB 36, 113th overall, which puts him the beginning of the 10th round. Underdog, it puts him in the 9th round tier at RB 34. DraftKings, he's pretty high. RB 29 looks like he's in the beginning of the 8th round. I think the DraftKings overall ADP and RB ranking is probably the most accurate right now. So where I'm looking to draft Alvin Kamara, it's probably, I'll start to think about it in the 8th round because I think, one, I don't want to draft him as my RB2. I think if you're low on running back, he's probably not a guy you want to be in on anyways. If you have 2 running backs already, though, and it's the 8th round and you're just like, you know what, I think these 2 running backs can hold the fort down, I'm going to grab Kamara as my 3. And when he comes when he's ready to play week 5 or week 7, whatever it is, he's going to add a nice RB3 to my game and contribute as a low-end RB2. So I'm open to this DraftKings outcome being the best decision to buy him. I'm going to continue to draft him on Drafters. That's the lowest overall ADP out of all of these sites here. Underdog, it's half PPR. I'm not as excited there, but with Drafters being full PPR, I think that's that's pretty crazy. And then looking at my projections real quick, I ended up giving him about 169 PPR points. That would put him as the RB27 last year, and in half PPR, he would have been the RB30 last year with these total points per game, or these total points for the season long. And then with a 13-game suspension, or 13 games played, that means a 4-game suspension. That comes out to about 13 points per game, 11.3, and I am lower than what he was last year, but that's just because he now has competition. He's got Jamal Williams, who they signed and they're going to use. They have Kendre Miller, who they drafted and they're going to use here. So I don't think Kamara is going to be a bell cow when he comes back. If we look at his numbers from last year, basically, I think you're going to look, it's going to look a lot like, at worst, it's going to be these 7, 8 in, 7, 8, 9 carries, game wise here. 12, I think he's going to probably hover around 12 carries per game. I think that's kind of where he's going to fall into play here. And then the targets between 4 and 5 targets per game. I think you're likely looking at his baseline being weeks 9 to 12, which again, that's kind of his low bar, which is, that 9 to 12 fantasy points per game. When he does score the touchdowns, that's what's going to boost him. So I'm thinking he's probably in full PPR. He's probably a 11 to 14 points per game guy. In half PPR, it's probably more like 10 points per game. And again, to me, that's low end RB2 status. And for where he's being drafted right now, I think I want him in the 8th or 9th round. Let me see if I got anything else on here for you guys. Again, I'm projecting Jamal Williams to be the primary ball carrier for those games that Kamara is out. And right now I'm kind of hedging. Like I'm projecting 5 games missed, because that gives me the 4-game suspension and maybe 1 game missed. And then if it is 6-game suspension, I'm kind of right in the middle there. So I'm projecting 5 games missed for Kamara. Again, roughly about 13 fantasy points per game, which would kind of put him, at that low end RB2 status here, about RB25 to RB30. And then my projections right now, they ended up ranking Kamara as, where is he? He's coming in right here as my RB31 in my season-long projection. So that's right between Samaje Perine and Brian Robinson. So that kind of puts him, at the edge of that 8th, 9th tier. I don't know. I'm curious. Are you guys in on Alvin Kamara? If it's a 4-game suspension, I think I'm fine with it. The 6-game suspension is probably going to make me think twice about it. Hopefully we get this news to come out soon. But again, I view Kamara more like, kind of like an Antonio Gibson type guy. Wherever Gibson's being drafted, kind of in that James Cook range, I think if you want Kamara on your team this year, plan for him to be your RB3 when he returns. You want to have at least 2 running backs that he can maybe compete with to be your RB2 or RB3. So that's kind of where I stand with this. Curious what your thoughts are. Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you are new. And yeah, thanks for watching. Peace.